Before we begin, let me ask you something that may stay with you long after this story ends. How do you forgive a betrayal that starts with love, but ends with the kind of cruelty you never saw coming? If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to VengeTaleStory right now because this one, may change the way you look at family forever. My name is Eleanor Ward. I'm 68, and I've spent my entire life in a small stone cottage tucked at the bend of Willow Lane in Devon, England. To strangers, my home looks like something out of a postcard. Ivy climbing the front walls, roses blooming even in the stubborn chill of early spring, and a narrow footpath that always smells faintly of lavender. People say the cottage is warm, peaceful, a place where anyone would be lucky to grow old. But to me, it's a museum of mistakes, a graveyard of regrets that I walk through every morning. I raised 2 children, but only one stayed. My daughter Grace, gentle, soft-spoken, the kind of woman who apologizes even when she's hurting, remained close. She visited every Sunday, brought homemade scones, and never once raised her voice at me, even when she should have. My son Oliver, though, he left the moment he turned 21, slammed the door so hard the picture frames rattled, and never forgave me for the life I couldn't give him. He said I gave too much of myself to the wrong people, that I mothered the whole world except the one boy who needed it most. And maybe he was right, because while my own children learned to do without, I kept opening my door to others. Over 2 decades, I fostered 28 children. Some stayed a few months. Some stayed years. They came with bruised hearts, shaken trust, and stories they were too scared to speak. But they filled the cracks in my life the way sunlight fills a broken window, quietly, gently, beautifully. Every goodbye tore something from me. Every arrival stitched something back. But in all those years, through all those children and all those meals and all those late-night talks, I kept a secret from them, from Oliver, from Grace, a secret that would one day bring my entire world crashing down. I had already signed my cottage into Grace's name, behind her back, years before she even knew. And before you judge me, let me tell you why. Guilt. That simple, that heavy. A mother's guilt is a weight that doesn't loosen, not even with time. Grace was my helper as a little girl, quietly stepping aside when another foster child needed the bigger bedroom, or when a social worker came unannounced, or when one of the children woke screaming in the middle of the night and I had to rush to comfort them. She never complained, but she always looked replaced, like she wanted to belong to me but didn't know if she still did. I saw it every day, and I hated myself for it. So as the years passed and my hair turned gray, I feared one thing, that Grace would grow old remembering me not as her mother, but as the woman who loved everyone else more. So I signed a cottage over to her. No conversation, no warning, just a trembling signature on a legal form I convinced myself was a gift of love. A quiet apology carved into stone. But apologies given in secrecy often come back to haunt you. And mine did, because Grace fell in love with a man named Aaron Huxley, a man who smiled too easily, listened too intently, and shook hands like he was sealing a deal. He had charm polished like a shop window, a voice that felt rehearsed, eyes that never held warmth, only calculation. A man who believed everything had a price, including family. When they married, I told myself my daughter was happy. I told myself Aaron was simply ambitious. I told myself he would cherish her. But the first time he stepped into my cottage, he looked around not with appreciation, but with appraisal, like he was already imagining walls torn down, floors replaced, rooms repurposed, as if my home, my sanctuary, was just a piece of land waiting to be flipped. He didn't know the cottage was already in Grace's name. But when he found out, everything changed. Looking back now, the warning signs were everywhere. The missed Sunday visits, the rushed phone calls, the tension in Grace's voice every time she said, "Mom, everything's fine." The way she avoided eye contact when she finally admitted Aaron had been asking more questions about the cottage, its value, its size, its land rights. but I wanted to believe in her happiness. I wanted to believe her marriage was strong. I wanted to believe that the girl who had sacrificed so much as a child was finally living the life she deserved. I didn't know I had handed her a gift that would turn into a weapon, and I didn't know that weapon would one day be used against me. Some betrayals are intentional. Others are the byproduct of fear, of pressure, of the wrong person whispering into fragile ears. Grace's betrayal was the kind that grows slowly, the kind you don't see until it's wrapped around your life like a vine, squeezing until there's nothing left but regret. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because before the heartbreak, before the eviction notices, before the Cold War inside my own family, there was a moment, a single moment, when I realized something about Aaron Huxley. He wasn't just interested in the cottage. He wanted control, and he knew the fastest way to get it was through Grace. My secret had given him leverage. My guilt had given him opportunity. My silence had given him power. And all of it, was about to cost me everything. If you want to know how a mother loses her home, her daughter, and the truth she spent a lifetime avoiding, then stay with me. The real story is only just beginning. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Make sure to subscribe to VengeTaleStory so you don't miss what is coming next, where the first crack in our family begins to show, and the betrayal that would shatter my life takes its first breath. This is only the beginning. Aaron Huxley looked like the perfect British gentleman. Tailored navy suits, shoes polished enough to reflect your face, a crisp accent that made even insults sound polite. He smiled with all 32 teeth, but none of them ever reached his eyes. Behind that smile lived a man who worshipped two things: status and control. He married Grace within a year of knowing her, swept her off her feet with candlelit dates, weekend trips to Bath, and promises she was too hopeful, too gentle, too eager to believe in. To her, he was security wrapped in charm. To me, he was a wolf in a silk tie. And slowly, masterfully, he convinced her that my cottage, her inheritance, was being wasted on an old woman clinging to memories. At first, it was subtle. A comment here, a sigh there, a look that lingered a moment too long on the cracks in the stone wall. Then it grew bolder. Every visit became an inspection. "Eleanor," he'd say, tapping the wooden banister, "these stairs are dangerous. You could fall." As if I hadn't climbed them for 68 years. "Why keep a 3-bedroom house? You live alone." As if the house didn't echo with the laughter of 28 foster children who needed space to feel safe. "You're nearly 70. You need support." Support? No. He wanted the land. Developers had been sniffing around Willow Lane for years. Rumors whispered of a new road, a shopping village, new money pouring into the quiet countryside. Prices were rising. Investors were circling. Opportunity was blooming like weeds after rain. Aaron didn't want the cottage. He wanted the value pulsing underneath it. Grace didn't see it. Or maybe she didn't want to. Because somewhere inside her was still that little girl who believed she never came first. And then came the Sunday afternoon that shattered the illusion of peace. It was a quiet day, the kind Devon is known for. Soft sunlight, kettle boiling, birds chattering like gossiping neighbors. Aaron's parents were visiting. Polished people with polished opinions. The kind who judge the quality of a person by the firmness of a handshake. We sat around the dining table. The same table where I had fed frightened children spaghetti on their first night. The same table where I stayed awake, comforting sobbing teenagers. The same table where Grace once did her homework, quietly competing with the chaos around her. Aaron cleared his throat like a man about to make a grand announcement. Then he placed a folder on my table, a thick one, lined with papers, legal papers. "Eleanor," he said gently, too gently, "we've arranged your transition." I blinked. Transition. He nodded, pleased with himself. "To a care home. Sunnybrook Retirement Residence has a room ready for you Tuesday morning." There was no hesitation in his voice, no room for discussion, just a decision he believed he had the right to make. My eyes moved to Grace. Her face was red, not embarrassed, ashamed. I felt my stomach knot. Grace, you agreed to this? Her lips trembled before her voice did. Mom, you shouldn't be alone anymore. Her words were soft, but behind them was something heavy, years of quiet ache, years of watching strangers share more of my time than she ever did. Then Aaron delivered the blow he had been sharpening for months. Besides, he said with a shrug, you don't deserve such a big home when Grace and I can actually put it to good use. My heart stopped. You don't deserve it. The words sank like stones in a deep lake. The cottage I spent my life filling with love, with pain, with second chances. And this man, this outsider, dared to tell me I didn't deserve it. Grace said nothing. Not one word. Silence can be louder than betrayal. And hers echoed through the room like a bell. Aaron leaned back, confident he'd won. He didn't know the house was already in Grace's name. He didn't know he legally held the knife. And then came the twist, the poison he had saved for last. You cared more about strange foster kids than your own children, he said calmly. Grace told me everything. Everything. That word cut deeper than the accusation, because it meant Grace had shared her wounds. But not with me. With him. Aaron didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to argue. He had tapped into the one truth I never dared to confront. My past mistakes were coming back like ghosts. Grace's childhood, the loneliness she never voiced, the longing she swallowed whole, the resentment she buried under politeness, was finally surfacing, and Aaron was using it like a crowbar. In that moment, I realized something chilling. He wasn't just trying to take my home. He was trying to rewrite history, make himself the savior, Grace the victim, and me the villain. Maybe I deserve some of it. Maybe I failed my children while trying to save others. Maybe my love had been too thin, stretched too far across too many broken souls. But even then, even with my guilt rising in my throat, something felt wrong. Deeply wrong. Because Grace looked torn, eyes full of hurt, but also full of fear. Fear of disappointing him. Fear of challenging him. Fear of choosing between the mother she felt neglected by and the husband she was slowly being shaped by. And yet, as devastating as that moment was, the deepest secret of all was still hidden. A secret that you, the audience, know before I do. A secret Grace did not know. A secret Aaron did not see coming. A secret that would change everything. Because miles away, in a rundown flat overlooking the gray waters of Bristol, a man was packing a bag. A man with the same eyes as mine. A man carrying anger and sorrow and 10 years of unspoken truth. My son, Oliver. The boy who left at 21 and promised never to come back. The boy who blamed me for every piece of pain he carried. The boy whose childhood wounds were deeper than I ever understood. That boy was coming home, but he wasn't the same boy who left. Life had carved him sharp. Loss had hardened him, and he was returning with a purpose that none of us, not me, not Grace, and certainly not Aaron, were prepared for. If you think you've seen betrayal, if you think you know where the story is heading, trust me, you don't. Not yet. Make sure you're subscribed, because what happened next will reveal the moment Oliver walks back into Willow Lane. And the storm he brings with him will tear this family open in ways no one can predict. The real battle begins next. Before we begin, if you're watching this and haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because the emotional storm in this chapter, it changes everything. Let's step inside St. Mary's Hall. The worst betrayals never happen behind closed doors. They happen under bright lights, in front of people you've known for half a lifetime, where humiliation echoes louder and truth has nowhere to hide. 2 days after that disastrous Sunday tea, the community gathered at St. Mary's Hall for the annual fundraiser. I had attended every year for 40 years. I baked cakes, crocheted blankets, even organized raffles. That hall was filled with people who had watched me raise children not my own. People who trusted me. People who believed in me. But that night, that hall became the stage for my undoing. The room smelled of warm pastries and polish. Folding chairs clattered as people found seats. Children ran between tables. Old friends waved at me as I walked inside, smiling the way people smile when they see someone familiar, someone safe. I had no idea I was walking into an ambush. At first, everything seemed normal. Grace and Aaron arrived a few minutes after me. Grace looked tense, but I told myself she was tired, overwhelmed, still struggling with the conversation from Sunday. But Aaron walked in like he owned the place. Head high, suit perfect, smile practiced. He shook hands. He greeted people by name. He even kissed Mrs. Pemberton on the cheek, the same woman who used to bring homemade biscuits for my foster children. And then, like a man waiting for his cue, he stepped toward the stage where a microphone stood. He tapped it twice, that authoritative, arrogant tap that demands attention. The hall fell into murmurs. People quieted. Eyes turned. I felt a strange chill spread through my body. Something inside me whispered that I should walk out. Run. Leave before he opened his mouth. But my legs refused to move. Aaron cleared his throat. Everyone, he said, with the tone of someone delivering charity news, I'd like to share something important about Eleanor's well-being. My name, my well-being, announced by a man who barely knew me. My heart thudded like a drum inside my chest. Grace grabbed my arm, too late, too soft, too unsure. Before I could breathe, Aaron spoke again. Eleanor can no longer live safely at home, he said. Loudly, clearly, publicly. A hush swept through the hall. He smiled, a patient, patronizing smile, and continued. She'll be moving to care accommodation this week. Whispers, gasps, shock. Dozens of eyes turned to me, some wide with pity, some with disbelief, some with the cruel curiosity that only small towns carry. I opened my mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Aaron kept going. She's been overwhelmed for years. The house is too much. And frankly, he added, as if speaking universal truth, it should be with family who can manage it. My hands trembled. My knees locked. My vision began to blur around the edges. He wasn't finished. It's not fair, he said louder, for her to hang on to a property she no longer needs. The words struck like stones. In that moment, I wasn't Eleanor Ward, the woman who mothered 28 wounded children. I wasn't a neighbor, or a friend, or a mother of two. I was a problem, a burden, an inconvenience to be relocated. Humiliation clung to me like smoke. My throat tightened. My breath shortened. The room tilted. Grace stood beside him, silent, eyes glistening but lips sealed. Her guilt, her fear, her conflict, all trapped behind that terrible silence. And that silence broke something inside me. I felt the exact moment my relationship with my daughter cracked in half. Not from anger, but from heartbreak. Then, just as I thought the humiliation had reached its peak, something shifted. A ripple passed through the back of the hall. People's heads turned. Conversation stalled. Even the children stopped laughing. The double doors creaked open. A tall man stepped inside. Dark coat, shoulders heavy with history, eyes sharp as winter. For a heartbeat, I didn't recognize him. Then my breath caught. It was Oliver, my son, the boy who left. The boy who slammed doors and carried wounds I couldn't heal. The boy who disappeared for 12 years, calling maybe twice a decade. And now, here he stood, unannounced, uninvited, unprepared for the spectacle unraveling before him. But watching it unfold with a face I couldn't read. There was no smile, no warmth, only a cold, burning stare. At me, at Grace, at Aaron. Something dangerous simmered behind his eyes. He had seen everything. He had heard everything. He had walked into the hall at the exact moment his mother was being publicly stripped of dignity by the man who married his sister. And the entire room felt the shift. The air thickened. Whispers died. Even Aaron faltered for a second, a flicker of unease betraying his confidence. Oliver didn't move. He didn't step forward. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, watching my humiliation with clenched fists. And in that instant, something inside me twisted painfully. He didn't rush to my side. He didn't defend me. He didn't confront Aaron. He just watched, like he was studying a crime scene, like he was collecting evidence, like he was deciding what version of the story he believed. Because here's the truth. Oliver didn't come home to save me. He came home for answers, for closure, for the ghosts he'd been running from. And humiliation was only gasoline on a fire already burning inside him. He wasn't my rescue. Not yet. But he was the beginning of something unpredictable, something sharp, something necessary, something dangerous. The son who swore he would never return had walked into the room at the exact moment my life was collapsing. Coincidence? Or fate? Even I couldn't tell. But one thing became painfully clear. Aaron thought he was controlling the game. He believed he had silenced me. He believed he had Grace secured. He believed he had already won. But he had no idea that the man standing in the back of the hall, silent, watching, simmering, was about to unravel every plan he had. Because while Aaron fought for property, Oliver fought for something much darker. And the moral line between justice and revenge was about to blur in ways none of us could imagine. If you think the humiliation at St. Mary's was the breaking point, you're wrong. It was the spark. I found refuge beneath the old oak tree behind St. Mary's. The same oak that shaded school fairs, church picnics, and childhood laughter. But that day, it stood over me like a witness to my breaking. For the first time in years, I cried. Not quiet tears, but the kind that come from somewhere deep, from guilt, from humiliation, from old wounds you pretend have healed. My hand shook. My coat felt too thin against the cold. Then I heard footsteps. Heavy, familiar, uncertain. Oliver. But he didn't rush toward me. He didn't kneel. He didn't wrap his arms around his mother the way sons do in films or sanitized stories. He stood beside me, distant, a silhouette with too much history between us. "Mom," he said, voice low, almost cold. "I'm only here because someone sent me a message." I lifted my eyes, still blurred with tears. He held out his phone. A text glowed on the screen. "Your mother is being pushed out of her home. Come if you want to stop it." No name, no introduction, just the truth, like a punch. Someone knew what Aaron planned. Someone knew before I did. Someone was watching, and someone wanted me protected. My heart fluttered with fear and confusion. I didn't know who yet, but I would. The silence between us stretched. Heavy, painful. There were things Oliver never said. Wounds he never forgave. He left at 21 with a suitcase and a look of betrayal I still can't forget. He believed the foster children had taken the space that belonged to him. He wasn't wrong. I raised children who entered my home broken, desperate, alone. And without knowing it, I created that same loneliness in my son. Now here he stood, taller, older, hardened, but still carrying that boy's ache inside his chest. But today he stood between me and Aaron. Even if he didn't hug me, even if he didn't forgive me, he came. When we reached the cottage, the first thing I heard wasn't voices, it was boxes. The thud of them being moved, the scrape of furniture, the sound of a life being dismantled. Aaron was already there, in front of my home, with movers he had hired, acting like the king of a castle he hadn't built. He smirked when he saw Oliver. "Well," Aaron said smoothly, "look who decided to come back for the free real estate." Oliver's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a calm danger that made the movers freeze. "A quiet storm. Touch anything in this house," he said, voice steady as a blade, "and I'll make you regret it." The air shifted. Aaron let out a short, amused laugh. "Oh, spare me," he said, waving a dismissive hand. "Eleanor already signed the property to Grace, which means he tapped his chest, have full authority over what happens next." And painfully, he wasn't wrong. Grace owned it, and Aaron controlled Grace. That's what made him dangerous. He wasn't chaotic. He wasn't sloppy. He wasn't cruel for fun. He believed he was right. He believed I deserved to be moved. He believed Grace deserved compensation. He believed my life should now be an asset, not a memory. A villain with a point is the worst kind. Grace stood behind him, shaking, torn, confused. Her eyes said she hated what was happening, but her silence said she feared him more. And just as the tension thickened, just as Oliver took another step forward, something unexpected sliced through the air. A silver Volvo pulled into the driveway. Slow, controlled, purposeful. I frowned. I didn't recognize the car. A woman stepped out. Short chestnut hair, kind eyes behind thin glasses. A soft but commanding presence, the kind that silences a room without raising a voice. She walked toward us with confidence, pulling a folder from her bag. It took me a full 10 seconds to place her. Then my breath caught. "Amelia?" I whispered. Amelia Rhodes, my very first foster child. The one who arrived at 6 years old with a suitcase full of clothes that didn't fit and nightmares that lasted until dawn. The one who clung to my leg the first night and refused to let go. The one I lost sleep over, hoping I was doing the right thing. And now, she stood in my driveway, grown, steady, calm, wearing the posture of someone who has spent years learning to fight with paper and law. Aaron crossed his arms, irritated. "And you are?" She handed him a sealed envelope. "Mr. Huxley," she said, voice like polished steel. "You are in violation of elder coercion law and property misrepresentation. Grace may own the deed, but Eleanor has protected residency rights." The world blurred for a moment. Residency rights? I stared at her, confused, stunned. "What do you mean?" I whispered. Amelia turned to me and smiled the soft smile I remembered from years ago. "You didn't know, did you?" "No, I didn't." My heart pounded as she explained. "Before your husband passed, he filed a lifetime occupancy clause. It ensures you can remain in this property until the day you choose to leave." My breath hitched. My late husband, always quiet, always thoughtful, always worried I'd be alone, had protected me years before I ever needed protection. And Amelia, my little Amelia, had found the document while helping another foster child with paperwork. She drove 2 hours from London, just to stand here, just to defend me. Aaron's face drained of color. "You can't do this," he snapped. Amelia raised an eyebrow. "I can, and I will." Grace suddenly burst into tears, the kind that come from realization, from guilt, from a near catastrophe finally avoided. Not because the house was slipping from her grasp, but because she finally understood what she had almost done to me. Her mother, the woman who loved her, imperfectly, yes, but fiercely. And then came the final twist. Amelia turned toward Oliver. "By the way," she said softly, "you were the anonymous message sender, weren't you?" The world went still. Grace froze. Aaron froze. I froze. Oliver didn't look at me. He didn't smile. He didn't soften. He just nodded. A small, quiet nod. But it felt like my heart cracked open. My son, the boy who left broken, resentful, angry, had been the one watching over me in secret. He was the one who warned himself. He was the one who came the moment he sensed danger. He was the one who refused to let Aaron bulldoze me without a fight. For 12 years, I thought he hated me. For 12 years, I thought he was gone. But he had been checking on me, from the shadows, from a distance, without wanting credit, without wanting recognition, just making sure I stayed safe. And if you think the truth ends here, you're wrong, because the message wasn't the only thing Oliver had been keeping secret. In Chapter 5, we'll reveal the darkness he brought home with him, the kind that doesn't just protect a mother, but destroys anyone who tries to hurt her. What comes next changes everything. Saturday morning arrived with a strange silence, a silence that didn't feel like peace yet, but something preparing itself for it. The kind you get right before a storm, or right after one has finally passed. The movers were gone. Aaron was gone, at least from the property. Rumor had it he was at his parents' house, spinning a new story, trying to salvage the image he worshipped more than the people he claimed to love. Grace stayed, not out of pride, not out of entitlement, but because she couldn't bear to walk away from the woman she had nearly betrayed. And I stood in my own cottage like a stranger visiting her own memories. The wooden floors I scrubbed for decades, the walls covered in handprints from children who grew taller than I ever imagined, the kitchen table marked with years of homework scratches and midnight tea confessions. All of it felt fragile. Almost gone, but not gone. Not yet. A broken daughter, a guilty mother, and a son learning to become something new. We sat around the kitchen table. Me, Grace, Oliver, and Amelia. For people bound together not by blood, not by duty, but by mistakes, regrets, and some strange version of hope that none of us trusted yet. Grace was the first to crack. Her voice trembled as she stared at her own hands, unable to look at me. "Mom, I let him make me believe you owed me, that you weren't enough, that I deserved this house because of how lonely I felt as a kid. I thought," she swallowed hard, "I thought the pain of my childhood was your fault. And maybe part of it was. But I never should have let him turn that pain into punishment." Her words stabbed deeper because they were true. I had failed her. Not maliciously, not intentionally, but I failed her the way a person does when they're trying to care for everyone at once and end up losing the ones closest. I reached across the table and took her hand. "Grace," I whispered, "I failed you. I let the house fill with children because I thought love multiplied easily. I didn't see how it divided your heart. I can't undo the past. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving you again." Tears poured down her face as she leaned into me, trembling like the child she once was. Then something unexpected happened. Oliver, my wild son, my broken boy-turned-troubled man, spoke next. "No," he said quietly, firmly. "You didn't fail us. You saved who you could, and now it's our turn to save you." It was the first time he had ever said our. The first time he stood with his sister instead of resenting her. For a moment, the cottage didn't feel haunted. It felt like a home again. The unraveling of Aaron Huxley. Aaron didn't disappear quietly. He was the kind of man who believed he could bend consequences just by speaking confidently enough. A man who thought paperwork was a weapon and charm was armor. But Amelia was sharper, and Oliver was angrier, and Grace, finally, was done being silent. It took months filled with tension and whispers across Willow Lane, months where rumors spread like wildfire. He tried to evict Eleanor. They say he forged documents. Grace is staying with her mom now. I heard he tampered with developer proposals. Amelia, steady as a lighthouse, dismantled him piece by piece. She exposed how he pressured Grace into property transfer decisions she barely understood. She revealed forged signatures submitted to the council on joint development proposals. She dragged into daylight every manipulation tactic he'd used against me, against Grace, against the community. Aaron argued. He threatened. He sent letters soaked in entitlement. He screamed into phones. But the truth has a way of echoing louder than lies. He lost his job first, then his credibility. Then the developer who backed him suddenly cut ties, terrified of the scandal. The final blow came outside the courthouse. Oliver stood waiting for him. No shouting, no fists, just a cold, steady voice. "You said Mom didn't deserve her home. But the truth is, she never stopped being ours. You're the one who never belonged here." Aaron stared at him with hollow, furious eyes. Then he walked away, a man stripped of power, stripped of image, stripped of the illusion that greed could ever build something lasting. Maybe he'll learn one day. Maybe he won't. But his chapter in our story ended right there, in silence, with the echo of Oliver's words hanging in the air like a verdict. The ending, and the kindness that saved me. 6 months passed. Seasons shifted, flowers bloomed, and the cottage, my cottage, felt alive again. Not because of the paint or the walls, but because of the people who filled it. That's when Amelia did something extraordinary. She organized a reunion. One by one, they arrived. All 28 foster children. Children I once fed, bathed, comforted, children I tucked in during thunderstorms and prayed for when they ran away from the lives that hurt them. Children who came to me broken and left with pieces of themselves stitched back together. They arrived as adults now, some with partners they adored, some with toddlers clinging to their legs, some with careers that made my heart ache with pride. Teachers, nurses, a firefighter, a poet, a midwife, a mechanic, a youth counselor, and one who worked with the council to help children just like he once was. Grace hugged every one of them. She asked about their lives, their families, their joys. She apologized to a few, cried with many, and rebuilt something inside herself by seeing the truth she had denied for so long. I hadn't replaced her. I'd simply expanded the family. And Oliver, he stayed close. He avoided big speeches. He never was the poetic type. But he stood by me, shoulders squared, eyes soft in a way I hadn't seen since he was a boy building Lego towers on the kitchen floor. We were learning each other all over again. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was drowning in regret. Because the truth finally appeared, clear, undeniable. The love I gave wasn't wasted. The wounds I caused didn't stay open forever. And the kindness I thought I didn't deserve came back, stronger than ever, to save me. This wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. My children, by blood and by heart, were rewriting the story with me. And the future? Well, there are still secrets, still wounds, still stories unfinished. But for now, the cottage stands. So do we, and so does hope. If this story moved you, don't leave without showing some love. Your support helps me create more powerful stories like this one. Like this video, drop a comment. Which moment hit you hardest? Subscribe to VengeTaleStory for more emotional, gripping, real-life, inspired tales of justice, redemption, revenge, and healing. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Because trust me, the next tale is already unfolding.